So last year is definitely one of the biggest reasons why I'm trying to do this, because I don't know if you remember, but Aaron was bringing me on to
Yes,
talk about
I do.
sharing fan art.
Uh-huh.
And right before that, I was like in a panic downstairs. We hadn't talked about what we were going to go through or how it was going to work out. And so I messaged him and I was like, can we just meet a couple minutes before and at least go over it? And he goes, yeah, just meet me up, in another area. And then he
Yeah,
brought
yeah,
me
yeah.
into where you guys all were and just sat me down on the couch and sat next to me. And I was just kind of sitting there for a minute, like, oh no, everybody here. I started seeing faces and I was like,
Mm.
like ultimate imposter syndrome. Like everybody belongs here except for I recognize every single person here. And just like I'm sitting next to Aaron on the couch and Parris is right on the other side and Colt is there. And I just started to have this like tunnel vision where, oh no, what am I doing here? And I gotta say, you you are so authentically genuine. You are the person you are on camera, the exact same person in real life. You just started talking to me. Colt came over and started talking to me and Danny. And after a couple minutes, I just realized, oh, we're all just here because we love games. And that's we all have that unifying bond. And we just started talking for a while and hanging out and it really helped me calm down. About 20 minutes later, I froze up again because I was standing on stage for the first time since I can remember. But you helped me out a lot, and that experience really led to wanting to kind of showcase people in the community and fans in the community. I'm not sure if you're aware, but another aspect of this show is we're going to be asking fans to submit their fan art for games that are coming out,
Okay.
and we're going to be giving out some art kits and everything to kind of give resources to people that may not have them, and controllers and consoles, um, kind of as an incentive to help people get over that hurdle of sharing their personal art, just kind of as a payback for
Yeah.
all the experiences I've been able to get in this amazing community. And you were a huge part of that. So when I asked you to come on and you immediately said, yeah, I'll do it. It's just another example of how awesome everybody is on here, and especially you. So thank you.
No, no. First and foremost, thank you for having me come on the show. Like, yeah, like you said, when you sent the invite, I go, yeah, and so of course, because it was great getting to meet you last year and talk to you and get to know you a little bit. I know we're kind of warming up now, so I don't know if you want me to kind of tell the story now, but I will
No,
say,
it's cool. We can,
okay,
I'll
well,
just, we're just going to kind of roll into the
okay,
conversation. So
I will just launch into it to exactly what you're talking about. The feeling that you had, I have that every time, every
yeah,
single time.
wow.
What am I doing here? Why am I here? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Where I have that imposter syndrome. It does not matter. I don't care how many times I do this. I don't care how well I may know someone. I always have that type of anxiety going in. But, luckily I've grown enough to be able to kind of get over it pretty quickly. But I know that feeling. I know that exact feeling that you have. And I think maybe that's also why, knowing that you were kind of in a new space, I wanted to make sure that you felt as comfortable as you possibly can, because I know what that feels like. And the story I was going to tell is my thing. Like you mentioned, you realize, oh, we're all just here for the same thing. We're all just people. I've told the story before, but I'll say it here. Was this 2014 or 2015? I can't remember, but it was Halo Master Chief Collection. It was when they first announced that at E3, and we were behind closed doors, Danny and I, and we sat in on a presentation with Bonnie Ross, kind of talking about the Master Chief Collection and that whole thing. And I remember Danny leans over to me towards the end of the presentation and goes, "Hey, should we try and he goes, should I try, keyword here, I try and interview Bonnie Ross? And I'm like, yeah, of course you should do it. So, talk to PR or whatever, and they set it up, and Bonnie Ross is standing there ready to go. Danny last second goes, my voice, I can't, Parris, you do it. What? I panicked because it was like I was not prepared and I was not ready to do this. Right. And here I am talking, to the head of 343 about this game. So I did the interview. In my head, I'm panicking the entire time. I'm like, this is horrible. In my head, I feel like the interview was 30 seconds and I just wanted to get out of there. I just didn't. And to this day, I've not listened to it. I will not listen to it. I refuse to listen to it because I think it's bad. Everyone that listens to it says it's fine. But in my head, I was thinking it's bad. But the reason I say is this. A year later, we're at whatever Microsoft media showcase thing or whatever it was at E3. And now it's Halo 5, I guess, right? But Bonnie Ross is there with Kiki Wolfkill. And I knew Michael Pachter. And they're talking to Michael Pachter. I'm with Danny and Pete. And, Michael Pachter makes kind of the intro, right? To Bonnie Ross and Kiki. So we're talking to them. So as I'm talking to them, I mentioned, hey, a year ago, I talked to you. I go, it was probably the worst interview I ever did or whatever. I was super nervous, the whole thing. And then she says to me, and these words have stuck with me ever since, and it has helped me immensely. She goes, really? She goes, I'm always super nervous when I do these interviews. I'm always worried, that I'm going to screw something up. And then when she said that, I go, wait, she's nervous? She's nervous? Really? I go, wait, these are just people. We're just people. And since that point, I go into any scenario like that. I go, we're just people. You have no idea what's going on in anyone's head at that time, what kind of anxiety they may be having, what they may be thinking or feeling. They may be just as nervous as I am in this moment. And ever since then, I go into these interviews, I go into these things with no fear. And that, you know what, either it's going to go great or it's going to be a disaster. Who cares? We're all just people. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of my thing. And like I said, since that point, it has just really helped me. It's really allowed me to get out of my comfort zone when it comes to things like that, where normally I might shy away from something like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to screw it up. And I'm like, screw it. Just do it. Who cares? We'll see where it goes. Even when I did that Xbox showcase, that was a thing. That was like out of nowhere. I've never done anything like that ever in my life. Never been in front of a camera on a stage, reading off a teleprompter. None of that. I did not know what I was doing until literally moments before I walked out on that stage. Right.
Well, we couldn't tell.
You did a good job.
And that's a crazy, and I appreciate that. Thank you. But that's a crazy thing. Again, I take it back to those things that Bonnie said at that time. It's like, who cares? We're all nervous. We're all just people. Just do your best. Whatever happens. It'll be fine. And so I mean, like I said, anything that I've done in this space since that moment, that's just been my mantra. We're all just people.
Yeah, that's an awesome story, and kind of a perfect segue to get into. Speaking of how we're all just people, we're all here for the same thing. With this show, we like to begin where you can remember that, like your earliest memory where either art or video games or both started to play and have an impact on your life.
Easy. That's an easy one for me. My earliest memories of video games, I remember, and it wasn't even really the Atari 2600. If you go Google this for the younger people out there, Sears used to sell basically kind of a knockoff version of the Atari.
Yeah,
that was the first time I remember playing Pong, like with the paddles or whatever. That was kind of my earliest memory with games. But I can tell you, the thing that cemented it for me was this. Well, it was 1982. This was 1982. We took a family vacation and to go to the World's Fair. It was in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1982. And we had driven kind of like all up the Eastern Seaboard and around, but then ultimately we're going to end up in Knoxville. So I remember we stayed at a Sheraton hotel. I want to say it was in Tennessee. I can't remember exactly, but the point is, I remember being at the Sheraton hotel. And back then, there used to be arcades like in these hotels, right? These little mini arcades. I don't know if they do that anymore. That was the first time I saw Donkey Kong. And it vividly sticks in my head to this day with seeing that game and playing that game. And then the whole point of the World's Fair was they had a Pac-Man Expo at this 1982 World's Fair. And I'm doing air quotes, got lost at this World's Fair. This was a joke in my family because at that time I'm 9 years old, something like that. I'm pretty young. And I was obsessed with Pac-Man. And I just went to this Pac-Man Expo. And I remember my parents were looking for me and they couldn't find me. My older sister, they couldn't find me. But then my older sister was like, I know where he is. I'm at that Pac-Man Expo. And they found me. But that was like the two moments, that family road trip, that was kind of the moment that video games really grabbed me. And then kind of the ending to that was we're driving back home. I'm from St. Petersburg, Florida. So we're driving back to Florida. And I remember my stepfather, it was like a Kmart or something like that. This is what I'm telling you. These memories stick in my head. We stopped at like some Kmart, and my stepfather bought me the Atari 2600 with Pac-Man coming off of that road trip because obviously they saw how much I loved it and I was really into it. And yeah, I got Pac-Man that day. I remember getting, I think it was like, remember, it was Combat that came with the Atari 2600. It was Pac-Man, and I want to say we got Donkey Kong. It was either at that moment or was very shortly after.
Right.
But that was it. I was hooked at that point. As I got a little bit older, early 80s, I used to every Saturday I would get like $10 worth of quarters. And I would get, I remember this to this day, I would get on the number 26 city bus. It would take me to downtown St. Petersburg. I would get a transfer at the bus station. I would get on either the 33 bus or the 36 bus, which would take me to Tyrone Square Mall. And there was an arcade. It was called Aladdin's Arcade in this mall. And they had everything in there. And I would spend my entire Saturday just there playing games. Like, almost every weekend that obviously my mom, would give me money to be able to go. But that was like my highlight. And I had like my buddies and friends that I knew there and we'd all hang out. And there was a game in that arcade called, oh my God, why am I blanking? Oh, it was called, was it Final Fight? I think it was called Final Fight. Something like that. Wait. I'm blanking. Oh crap! I'm blanking on the name. I'm screwing it up. But it was like this military shooter. Wait, what was it called? Why am I blanking on it? It was from Taito. Oh, I'm blanking on the name now. It doesn't matter. But it was like this military shooter game that you could jump into these tanks. Like you could be on foot and you're shooting, but you could also jump into these tanks as well. Like there was like
I know
a little
what
tank.
I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh, why am I blanking on the name?
Now I'm really thinking about this.
Like I want to Google this so bad right now. I'm screwing it up. But that, like Zaxxon, Defender, like I said, Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man, Donkey Kong Jr. God, what else from that era? I was just absolutely, did I say Zaxxon already? But I mean, these were the games that just molded me back then in the arcades that I just absolutely loved. And then I remember like a little later towards the end of the arcade era, like as it was crashing, I remember my first co-op experience was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The arcade Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, you could have 4 people play all at once. Oh my God. That's all me and my buddies did. We would play that constantly. And then I'm in high school at this point, but Street Fighter 2. We used to skip school and there was a convenience store that was up the road from my high school and they had Street Fighter 2 in there. And we lived in there during lunch hour and maybe a little past lunch as well. And just play Street Fighter 2 back and forth. Everybody lining their quarters up, the whole thing. And that was just, those were my memories. And obviously, you know, the NES was huge. I always say the movie Christmas Story. I always say that my Red Ryder BB gun moment was Christmas 1985. My mom, unprompted, because I was not asking for this, she bought me the NES. It was the deluxe set that came with Rob the Robot, Duck Hunt, and Gyromite. I had no idea. I remember like seeing commercials, but I wasn't like, oh, Mom, I need this. Please get me this. Yeah. How she knew what prompted her to say, I'm going to get it, to this day, I don't know. But I'll never forget that Christmas. And she gave it to me on Christmas Eve, not Christmas Day, because it was like this huge surprise. I remember my cousin was over, and we just went in my room and we set it up, and man, we just played Duck Hunt all freaking night. It was like the most amazing memories. Thing. And then shortly after that, I remember buying 10-Yard Fight, which was a football game. And I got Super Mario Brothers, a little bit later on. And that was it, man. The rest is history from that point. But those were my early memories, my childhood growing up, the things that stood out to me that really got me, into video games and made like a huge impression on me. And it's why I, to this day, right now, still talk about and love it, play it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So clearly they had an impact on you immediately. Yeah. Did they, as your life progressed and the paths that you chose as far as careers or school, did they stick with you, or did they kind of come and go?
Gaming's always stuck with me. So kind of my backstory a little bit. Like I said, I'm from St. Petersburg, Florida. My teenage years, I was a knucklehead, as some people were go, duh, of course you were. But I was kind of a knucklehead. I gave my mom kind of a hard time, because at this point, my stepfather, he had passed away. He passed away in like 1984. So that was, God, like I said, I was probably about a 10 or 11 at that point. But that was tough on me, because, he was my stepdad, but he was my dad, if you know what I mean. Right, so that was hard to lose him at such a young age. So now I had my older sister, she was in high school at the time. So it had a couple rough years there, not having that father figure in my life. And then I kind of just rebelled out. Long story short, what I'm saying is, in high school, I think I was too smart for my own good, unfortunately, because school really bored me. I did not go to school. I used to skip school all the time because I just was bored. Like, I was one of those kids that I wouldn't do any of my homework. I wouldn't do any assignments. I'd go take the tests, get a C, and I'm good. That was it. That's all I cared about. Yeah. That hurt me athletically because I was really good at baseball and my grades were never good enough to stay on the team. So I was constantly getting kicked off the team because my grades weren't good enough and I just didn't want to be in school. I'm saying that to say that, I got my act together by the second half of my junior year. Into my senior year, I started taking it serious, whatever, obviously graduate high school. Yeah. Then I go to college. I went to Florida State University. My mom did what she had to do to get me in there. And you got to think, this is early 90s. It was the #1 party school in the nation at that point. Wow. I'm 17. I hadn't turned 18 yet. I wouldn't turn 18 until like a couple months later. So I'm 17 years old going up there. Wow. Disaster. Absolute disaster. I was not focused. I mean, and you also got to remember, we're talking like 5 to 6 to 1 ratio girls to guys at that point, because Florida A&M and Florida State are both in Tallahassee. Oh, yeah, do the math. Okay. Yeah. So disaster. I lasted a semester and I was out. And it's because of that, I'll never forget. My mom basically gave me an ultimatum. I had 3 choices. Go back to school, get a job. No, 4 choices. Go back to school, get a job, get out her house, or join the military. Those were my only choices. I did not want to go back to school at that point. I just was not mature enough at that point. Having a job seemed weird. Still living at my mom's house. I wasn't going to just get out. So I was like, all right, if I'm going to get out, I'll go to the military. So that's what
I've played this game.
Yeah.
I know how to jump into tanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. But that was a pivotal moment in my life because a choice, and I have to tell this entire story, but
yeah, please.
This was kind of a crossroads moment for me. So I'll never forget. I was going to go into the Air Force. That's what I wanted to do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being it's called MEPS. I forget what the acronym stands for, but basically that's the processing center to get you kind of into the military, do physicals, all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every branch is there: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, everyone that's kind of going in at that time. So I'm going in the Air Force. That's what I wanted to do because I took the ASVAB test, scored real high on it. I knew what I wanted. I'm going to go to the Air Force. I'll never forget. I'm in line and there's a couple guys behind me that are going into the Navy. And they basically talked me out of going to the Air Force and into the Navy because the thing was, dude, do you want to be stuck at a base in Topeka, Kansas for your whole time and you don't get to see anything you're doing? I'm going to Navy. I'm going to get to see the world and travel and go to all this stuff. And that literally, again, I'm an idiot at this time. I'm immature. So yeah, I'm not going to go to the Air Force. That's dumb. I'm going to join the Navy. So in that moment, I joined the Navy. I literally pivoted and was like, nope, I want to go to the Navy right then and there. Wow. Best decision ever made in my life.
Yeah.
And there's a part 2 to that. So now I'm at the point where you have to pick like your boot camp, like where you're going to go in.
Mm-hmm.
So back then there were 3 different boot camps for the Navy you could go to. There was one, it's called Great Mistakes, but it was up in Chicago. Then there was the one that was in Orlando, which was actually at that time, I think was the only co-ed one. There were women and men that were both going to that boot camp. And then there was the one in San Diego. And I could have immediately gone to the one. I knew I didn't want to go to Chicago. Didn't want to do that. I could have immediately gone to the one in Orlando, or I could wait. I think it was like 6 months or something and go to the one in San Diego. And I had the foresight to know, don't go to the one in Orlando. Not because it was co-ed with girls, but that would have been a problem. But I knew to not go to the one in Orlando because I'm from St. Petersburg, Tampa area. I'm home. I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
There's nothing's changing for me. If I still want to see my same dumb friends and do all that, nothing changes for me. So I knew I didn't want to do that either. So I was like, I'll wait and I'll go to San Diego. Again, smartest decision I ever made. Well, no, there's part 3 to this, but leading to the smartest decision of my life. So, and I hope I'm not boring you telling this story.
No, this is all very fascinating.
But I feel like I'm getting to your original point.
Please take your time.
So I go to San Diego boot camp, and I'd never been to the West Coast at all. Again, my whole thing was get out, stop, go somewhere you've never been before, right? So that's why I went to San Diego, and San Diego boot camp, did it, loved it, the whole thing. Never been to California. So now I'm in San Diego doing that whole boot camp thing. Now you pick your orders to like where you're going to actually go. And going through different orders. I remember there was one to go to like Alaska. I remember there's one to go back to East Coast, like Jacksonville, Virginia, like all the, and I'm going to go on a ship no matter what it was going to be. I think the Alaska one was the only one that wasn't a ship, but there was one to go to Japan, in Sasebo, Japan, and be a part of ship's company of the LHA-3 USS Bellawood, the Devil Dogs. And I chose Japan again. Wow. I have a chance to like literally go live in another country. I have a chance to go do something I've never done before. I'm choosing that. So I chose Japan. So again, kind of fast forward some of the stuff. So yep, I chose Japan, wound up living there for 3 years. Again, the whole thing, taking it all the way back to the conversation I had with the Navy dudes in MEPS. I literally got to kind of see the world. Like I've been so many, like I said, I lived in Japan. I've been to South Korea. I've been to the Philippines. I've been to Russia. I've been to China. I've been to Hong Kong. I've been, to the Persian Gulf. I've been to Africa. I've been to India. I've been to Australia. I've been to Thailand. Like I got to do all these things because I was in the Navy, and I got to travel, and I got to see different cultures and meet different people. And it really helped shape who I am today, because again, it allowed me to get out of my comfort zone. It allowed me to meet different people and, the diversity, like my Navy brothers and sisters. Like, I'll never forget. And I actually still talk to this guy to this day. He was a white guy from Montana, and the only black person he had ever seen in his life was on TV. He never met a black person in his life until he went to the Navy, right? So it was a funny thing of, and this is just kind of the general thing of the Navy, where all of our different cultures and all the whole thing, we all start melding together. I'll never forget, probably a year after he'd been on the ship, he's listening to hip hop and he's doing it, like all these things. Like, I know I'm listening to Led Zeppelin and all these things because of that.
That's great.
And getting to the point. So I do the whole Navy thing. Did that for in Japan for 3 years. Then I decided to come take new orders. And again, this is where I tell you another part of smartest decision I ever made. It all leads up to this. For whatever reason, because I loved my time in Japan, absolutely loved it. To this day, I don't know why I left, because I could have taken orders and stayed. I was starting to learn the language, really ingrained into the culture. I used to travel all around Kyushu Island all the time, see different things. Like I'd been to Nagasaki, saw that. I went up to Hiroshima, saw all that, because this was around the time of the 50-year anniversary of dropping the atomic bomb. So there's protests, all kind of crazy things. Anyways, I don't know why I left, but for whatever reason, I decided to take orders back in San Diego. Right? I don't know why. To this day, I don't know why I did this, but I decided to take orders back in San Diego. So I take orders back in San Diego, and I remember, and I'm part of an aircraft squadron now. We're in the Top Gun hangar when Miramar was still Navy. It was actually transitioning to Marines when I was there. But I worked in the Top Gun hangar, F-14 Squadron, VF2. So when I first came back to San Diego, I only knew one person. And that was a guy I was in the Navy with. And he actually lived just north of LA. So I remember I took orders. I came back that first weekend. I just hung up at his house because he's the only person I knew. So we would hang out, and do whatever. And I remember he drove me back to the base in San Diego at Miramar that night. And I'm just sitting in my barracks room. And then he had drove back up to where he was. And I remember I was on the phone talking to him. This is now late at night. This is probably a Sunday night, like 11 o'clock at night. And I'm talking to him, and I hang up the phone. I kid you not. 30 seconds later, the phone rings again. I'm thinking it's my buddy calling me. So again, to give context to this, the base phone, you have like a general number you call, and then you dial an extension, right, to get like one of the rooms, right? Yep. So 30 seconds later, the phone rings. It's got to be him. Pick it up. It's a girl. This girl is on the phone. She's like, and I don't remember the exact conversation, but she had dialed the wrong number. And for whatever reason, we got into this conversation and decided, hey, let's meet the next day.
Wow.
It's my wife.
Wow.
Been married, been together ever since. Right?
Serendipity.
Wow. Yeah, it was weird. But the joke on that is, if I'd have stayed on the phone 30 seconds longer, she gets busy signal. She dials because she was calling another dude. She gets the right. She realizes it's wrong. Not busy signal. Dials the right number. Never meet her.
Wow.
That's how I met my wife.
Wow.
So again, all these little things leading up to that. Now, back to the original point of what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm saying all that to say this. So now I'm in VF2, and we used to be attached to the USS Constellation. That's what got me into IT by accident, because I used to be in charge of all the flight records. This is like Windows 95 is coming. Like, it was Windows 3.11. There was a Unix system we used to do, but we used to kind of by default handle the IT for the squadron on the Connie. So that's what kind of got me into that. Now, I wound up having to move to Virginia because, again, the Marines took Miramar. So they moved our squadron over to NES Oceana in Virginia, but we would always come back out here to San Diego. So did that for a year and a half, 2 years, however long that was. And I won't bore you with the details, but ultimately there was a screw up with my orders. I just married my wife, and because I was supposed to get shore duty, something happened. Anyways, long story short, I decided to get out. So I got out.
Okay.
Again, smartest decision I ever made. Much as I love the Navy, I honestly had no intention to ever get out. Smartest decision I made, because now I took those IT skills, and again, I'll never forget, I hopped in a car leaving Virginia with $2,000 in my pocket, driving back to San Diego. My wife had just gotten an apartment, and we were just gonna figure it out.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And but yeah,
well, you've got good instincts, so
Yeah.
you had something to go off.
Yeah, this is the craziest thing. But yeah, I remember driving cross country. Did it in 41 hours, by the way, because I was a madman. I just wanted to get back
Wow.
here.
Yeah.
But so that happened, and then long story short, I lucked in. I got a job working on the help desk at Sony Technology Center here in San Diego. So I used to work on the on the help desk, and then basically I pivoted that. I started doing desktop support. Then I was working in the data center. Then I pivoted that, left Sony, wound up taking a job for San Diego County, working in their IT department. I was doing sysadmin stuff, server admin stuff for them. I started doing level 3 support. Then that pivoted into, I wind up getting another job where I was doing IT support. Then I wound up working for Orange County out here in California, working in their data center. And then that led me into security, and the rest is history. Here I am. I've been doing it ever since. And that was 2005. So I like I said, I know I went way around and back to
no, that's the point. We want to hear.
Yeah.
That's
how that was like the 90s really molded me, being in the Navy, those early days. And then my early days in IT, working on the help desk and all that, kind of got me into my career path where I am with security now. But going back to gaming has always been a part of that, because even when my wife and I'll never forget, my wife and I got married in 96. And this is when the Nintendo 64 came out. And I remember I'm in Virginia. I remember driving around Virginia because it was sold out everywhere, finding a Toys R Us in like Portsmouth, Virginia or something, and they had a Nintendo 64. And I picked up the Nintendo 64, and I got Mario 64, of course, with it. Yeah. Game. Oh my God. I thought that was the greatest thing ever. I go,
had to get the cards in the aisle.
Yeah. I go, games will never get better than this ever. This is a cartoon. How is this ever going to get better than this? This is amazing. I thought that was so phenomenal.
You could still make a strong argument for it. It's still good.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, gaming that whole time has just been a part of it, because I remember I had Nintendo 64. And then I remember getting the Dreamcast, just thinking that was amazing. Ironically enough, I did not have a PlayStation 1. I've never owned a PlayStation 1. Okay. I never really got into PlayStation. Because even when I was in Japan, like I had the Super Nintendo, we had Sega Genesis, and I got the Sega Saturn. Like right before I left Japan, I had the See, I didn't know about the whole region blackout stuff. I had bought a Japanese Sega Saturn. And then I came back to the States, and none of the games worked. You couldn't buy any new games, and none of them worked. That sucked. But yeah, I had the Saturn. Like I said, did Nintendo 64, Dreamcast. Didn't have a PS1. And I've told this story a bunch. So now we're into like that 2001 era. I remember hearing about this E3 thing. And again, I'm a big Nintendo guy, right? Yeah, and the GameCube was about to come out at this point. I remember hearing about this E3 thing. And again, I'm lucky enough, I live here in Southern California. Oh, it's going to be in LA. How do you go? I see how much it costs to buy a pass. I'm like, that's too much. I can't do that. So I invented my company, because I'm working in IT. We do whatever, and kind of fudged it. And got a pass.
Press pass,
to come to E3 01. And I posted a couple of these pictures online, more recent in the last couple of years. But I remember going to E3 2001, and I'm there for Nintendo. I'm there for the GameCube. I want to see Luigi's Mansion, the Zelda that's coming out. That's all I cared about. Yep. But I will never forget walking into West Hall, and the first thing that you see is the EA booth. That was front and center. And they had this big video screen with Madden on it. And it was Christmas. I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
And just going to all the different booths. And I remember, it's so funny. I knew of the Xbox was coming out, and I remember, all right, let me go over to this Xbox booth and see what this whole thing might. This will never work. Let me go over here and look at this. I'll never forget. And I posted this picture online, seeing Halo for the first time.
Oof, I remember too.
Playing Halo. It was so buggy. I go, this is never going to work. This Xbox thing will be gone in a year. This will never work. I remember thinking that. I walked out of that E3 2001 so negative about what Microsoft was doing with the Xbox, because I was just not impressed with anything that they were showing. And like I said, I remember the GameCube stuff, and I'm pretty sure that the PS2 was there, because I remember seeing some PlayStation stuff and being impressed. Like, I was impressed by everything except Xbox coming out of that. Seriously. So I remember, now go to like that November 2001, I'm at my job, and I remember I had to go to CompUSA for some dumb reason for something. Like, I already had the GameCube pre-ordered, Luigi's, like, I'm locked in. That was all good. Right. That wasn't even an issue. But I remember it just so happened to be the launch day for the Xbox. And I had to go to CompUSA for something. I don't even know what it was. And I'm driving up, and I get out my car, and I see all these, and no one's in a formal line. There's just a bunch of people standing outside waiting for it to open. And I go, what are you guys here for? And they're like, oh, the Xbox. Huh. Well, yeah, that is coming out. Like, I'm not even fazed by it. I just so happened to perfectly time it that as the doors are opening, I happen to be walking up. So I literally walk in. I'm one of the first people walking in, because again, there's no formal line or anything. And then again, I don't know what convinced me of this. I go, you know what? I'm going to buy the Xbox. And I just bought an Xbox right then and there. And I remember some people were mad at me because I hadn't been waiting. And I'm like, well, there's no line. I don't know. I'm just going to buy one. Right. So I remember I bought the Xbox, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll get Dead or Alive 3. I'll get this Halo thing. Whatever. Right. Yeah. And I picked up Halo. I did not touch Halo for a month. Wow. I had Halo just sitting there in my house. And it's so funny.
You were like, I get it.
Yeah. It's so funny because I found the pictures, like, for whatever reason, I took pictures of like my entertainment center. You could see the original Xbox and all the game stuff. But I finally, a month later, so let me check out this Halo thing, because I just had the memory of it being so buggy, right? So, okay, let me check it out and see what it's like. Instant. Oh my God. This is amazing. Because again, going back to the Nintendo 64, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, right? These were kind of the shooter games, that I was used to playing on console. And I had started to kind of dabble in PC a little bit around this time, because I remember playing a lot of Unreal Tournament. And that was kind of my intro into online game. Like, oh my God, you can play with other real people. This is crazy.
Right.
Dreamcast. I remember playing NFL 2K1, I think it was the first online sports game that I played. Thought that was amazing. But anyways, like I said, I just remember doing that and just being blown away by Halo, and just thinking how incredible that for playing on a console with a controller, and it was just so great. And that's what hooked me into Xbox at that point. Now I'm starting to play games on Xbox, and then obviously a year, not even a year later, because I got into the alpha for Xbox Live. So this would have been the summer, of 2002, I guess, right? 2002. So I got in the alpha, and I remember, what was it? What was it? It was Revolt.
Yes.
Something else.
Revolt.
You play, and you got the headphones, and you're talking to people, and oh my God, this is amazing. Because I remember, like, you play on PC or like on the Dreamcast. Like, I had the keyboard for the Dreamcast, so if you want to trash talk, you had to type to trash talk. Wait, you could talk to people now? Oh my God, this is amazing. This is a game changer. So yeah, I was all in at that point. And I remember when Xbox Live came out, one of the first online games I was really hooked into was Ghost Recon. It was the first Ghost Recon. It was Ghost Recon. Too. Played that all the time. I remember playing Halo over X-Link Kai, because it would simulate like a LAN party thing. So that was like my first online with Halo stuff. So again, I kind of want to power through this stuff because I'll talk about this all day. But okay. I remember, I guess this was 2004 at this point, right? Halo 2. Like, I'll never forget going to that E3 and running to, like, the first one, again, 2001, the first, like, whatever. Now I am running beeline straight to the Xbox booth because I want to see that Halo 2 demo. Right. And it was Joe Staten. Joe Staten was giving the demo.
Oh, wow.
I went to that thing like 4 times during that week of E3. Wow. I just thought that was incredible. And then obviously, I'll never forget when Halo 2 came out. This is back when people actually stood in line at the midnight shows, midnight launches, you know, the GameStop or whatever. I'll never forget picking that. And at this point, I'm pretty active in like an online community and, you know, got a bunch of people, friends and all this. So Halo coming to Xbox Live was a big freaking deal then. And I just remember picking it up, running home midnight, hopping on, we jump into a party. Zanzibar was like the first thing that we played on all night till like 6, 7 in the morning, just playing those things. And like I said, I've just been hooked into the Xbox community, speaking more specifically ever since. That was my entry into playing a lot, like Rainbow Six was another big one, play online with friends all the time, stuff like that. And just really getting ingrained into the community. So now we're around that 2005 time. So I'm kind of bringing you into like where I am doing stuff now. So now we're around that 2005 time. And, you know, obviously the Xbox 360 is about to come out pretty soon. And I'll never forget, I was on Team Xbox, the site, their forums all the time. You know, that's where you kind of information, all that. And there was this guy that was on there. And he was always posting about this show that he does, this online audio show, which that's podcast. What are these? A podcast? What is that?
Right. At that time.
His name was Danny Pena, aka Godfrey. And it was Gamertag Radio when he had started it in 2005. And he used to spam those forums all the time. And I was always halfway. I don't even think I listened to it, honestly. It wasn't until I remember and again, this is the hustle he's instilled in me to this day. He somehow figured out who was going to that Xbox 360 reveal they did in Hollywood that was on MTV. You know, Elijah Wood hosted or whatever. He got, I forget her name now, but she was in the PMS clan and somebody else. I'm forgetting the names. But he got him on before the reveal was on TV. And they were talking about Perfect Dark Zero and all this stuff. And I remember he was posting on Team Xbox. So I grabbed that audio quick and I'm listening to it and so excited. And then that's what got me into start listening to gaming podcasts. Okay. So I would listen to Danny and Nano. That's his brother, Gamertag Radio. And then there was another one called DreamStation.cc. And that was wound up being one of my good friends, Chris Palladino and Tom, you know, MC Frags, a lot of his name back then, and all those guys, and Chad. And there was just this group of guys that would get on and just talk about video games, right? Yeah. And it's so funny because there's so many of them now, right? But they were just all friends. It's kind of like the Iron Lords as an example, where they all these are friends that grew up together and they get on talk about the podcast. So I listen to them all the time and I listen to Gamertag Radio. So long story short, now it's 2006 and I'll never forget. I see Danny and Chris. They're at Microsoft up in Redmond at this Lord of the Rings event, whatever the Lord of the Rings game was at that point. They're at like a preview event for it or something. And Tina Wood, her last name's not Wood anymore because she got married, but she's like the head of the whole Xbox events and stuff. Like when I did Showcase, she's basically the one that runs all that kind of stuff. I'm forgetting her last name now, but she's at Xbox right now to this day. She used to be on, was it G4 with Laura Foy? They used to have a show. I remember Jeff Keighley used to come on there all the time. Anyways, she's now at Microsoft. No, I said Tina. It wasn't Tina. It was Laura Foy. Laura Foy is the one that interviews Danny and Chris. And I see this video and I remember calling my buddy up and I go, you get to go to Microsoft and you do podcast? I was like, dude, we got to do this. We should do one too. I like to talk, right?
Yeah.
So again, another pivotal moment. This is like probably June of 06 or whatever, because my son had just been born the month before, which is crazy because he's about to be 17, which is wild to me. But I decide, hey, there's my two favorite podcasts I see there at this thing. I'm going to email them and say, hey, I want to start a podcast. Can you help? Is there any ideas, tips, tricks, things to do? Right? Like, how do you do it? So I emailed Danny. I emailed Chris. Danny, I don't hear back for like 3 weeks. I always give him crap about this. Yeah, I was like, oh, you freaking ghosted me. But Chris actually emailed me right back. And this is like a Saturday morning, like you and I are talking right now on a Saturday morning. He responded back and he was like, hey, I'd be happy to help. Let's hop on Skype and I'll talk you through it. So we get on Skype. Chris talks about how to use Adobe Audition. Like, he tells me everything, the equipment, all this stuff on how to start a podcast. So then I started a podcast and it was called The Old School Gamers. And it was terrible. Absolutely terrible. Right. And I remember sending the audio, Chris, and, giving advice on things, whatever. Anyways, the partner I had at the time, we kind of fell out over it, just dumb stuff. But so I'm not doing Old School Gamers anymore. So now it's July-ish, August of 06. I then hook up with another friend, Robbie, and we decide, all right, we're going to do a gaming podcast. What should we call it? All the good names are taken. So we wound up calling it Uncle Gamer Radio. And we started doing Uncle Gamer Radio. And I'm doing that starting in 06. So I did that with Robbie for a while. I'm on the TiVo community forums back when TiVo was a thing. And I see this guy on there talking about video games all the time. And I'm thinking, wow, he seems pretty good. So I reach out to him. Hey, we're doing this podcast. We're trying to figure it out. Hey, I don't know if you'd love to come on sometime or whatever. This guy's name is Jason Van Beveren. He is one of my dear friends to this very day. And he winds up coming on as basically the third voice on there. Robbie winds up bowing out, doesn't want to do it anymore. So now it's just Jay and I. So Jay and I did Uncle Gamer from 06 until he left in 2010, I want to say, because he had ambitions to work in the industry. He wanted a job in the industry. He wanted taking a job with EA. And he's still in the industry to this day. Even last time I was in Seattle, we went hung out, had wine, the whole thing. Again, one of my dear friends. But anyways, we did that for a long time. Danny, at this point, he's come in the picture. He's been a great help to me, mentor, the whole thing. Yeah. So whenever we go to E3, stuff like that, we would kind of collaborate, help each other out, do all these things over the years. Like I said, Jay winds up leaving in 2010, I want to say 09 or 2010, whatever it was. I had kept doing Uncle Gamer for a little while until 2011. I retire. Now I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm going to take you back to 07. So no, actually I'm going to take you back to late 06. So here's my first big break.
Okay.
I'm doing Uncle Gamer. I just started doing Uncle Gamer. It's terrible. It's not good, but whatever. I'm doing it. Somehow, some way, I got invited to the Gears of War launch event in Hollywood. Nice. And I go to this launch event and there's a bunch of media people there, the whole thing, get hands on with it a little quick. So there's a guy from One Up. I don't know if you remember One Up, but One Up, and they used to do this podcast called One Up Yours. It was one of my favorite gaming podcasts. So one of the guys that was there was Luke Smith. And Luke Smith is at Bungie now, basically head of Destiny, the whole thing. And that's how I met Luke Smith. And I remember we were talking and BSing around, and we wound up becoming friends that night because of that. Wow. Again, I'm at this Gears event. I'm recording audio there. It's terrible. So I do that. Now, somehow, some way, because the reason I bring up Luke is because then Luke came on Uncle Gamer. I remember Luke shouted us out on One Up, because again, One Up Yours at this time is probably the biggest gaming podcast out there, right? So shouted me out. John Davidson, somehow who runs IGN now, somehow, again, one of my heroes in this industry. was talking about something we said on Local Gamer. So it's like crazy. So now the name is getting out there. People actually kind of know the podcast and stuff we're talking about. Again, this is Wild Wild West back in those days. And early 07. Now, I talked about Chris. He's the person that helped me out first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
He winds up taking a job at Xbox. He was on Gamerscore blog back then.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He invited me to the Crackdown preview event or review, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I got invited to that. Went up to Redmond, the whole thing. I met Major Nelson. There's an infamous video that you can find online of me trying to play Guitar Hero and Major's trying to walk me through it, and it's terrible.
Nice.
So I go up there again. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I wound up going to this event. I remember I printed out these business cards. Like it's so cheesy when I think about it now, but it's so funny. And going up there to that event, Crackdown, got a tour of the Xbox campus.
Very cool.
When E was still at Xbox, because he was kind of the head of all the networking stuff at Xbox Live, all that stuff. Got to meet him, took a tour of Xbox Live. Major took us all around, got to meet all these people. Great time. But that was kind of the linchpin that got my foot in the door with Microsoft, as far as just kind of knowing some people there, or Xbox, right, I should say, and knowing people there and all that kind of stuff. Because shortly thereafter, I obviously must have made an impression, because they then invited me to be an Xbox MVP, which back then kind of got me access to certain things. Yeah, Aaron. Yeah, early days of Aaron, the whole thing, Trixie back in those days. And you'd get a little sneak peek at something. You're heavily indie and a lot of stuff, so you couldn't really talk about things. But that helped, because of that, Xbox kind of got me connected with EA. So now I'm getting invited to go out to Tiburon with Madden and NCAA at the time, and linked up with all these different people. And then again, this is where the hustling comes in. This 07 time, I caught wind that Activision was going to show the next Call of Duty, right? So at this point, we didn't know what Modern Warfare was. So somehow, some way, I got the email address to Robert Bowling. He was at Infinity Ward. He was a community manager, and I spammed him trying to get an invite, and he invited me. I wound up getting an invite to go up to Infinity Ward. It was up at Sherman Oaks to go see the Call of Duty. No one had seen it at this point, right?
Wow. So
we didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And we literally walked in, and they weren't even calling it Call of Duty 4. They were calling it Call of Duty 3, because another, I guess it was Treyarch, wound up making World at War, which wound up being Call of Duty 3. But they internally were working on Call of Duty 3, and it was Modern Warfare. And I'll never forget seeing that multiplayer. And, the kill streaks, just everything. Game changer. Obviously, completely changed the game at that point. I was one of the first people in the world to see that.
Wow.
And I remember they then, and again, this is where impressions happen, because think about it. Vince Zampella. It was Vince Zampella back then at Infinity Ward, Jason West, that whole thing. Again, I remember we all went out to dinner, and it's such a different world now than what it is, but it was way more intimate back then. And they're showing us this Call of Duty game, and we're just not even realizing it at a time that we're witnessing one of the pivotal moments in video games. Yeah, at that time, seeing that game. For sure. And then I remember they wound up doing the big Hollywood reveal, like a couple months later for the multiplayer, and I went to that. But again, you're meeting people and PR, so I'm making all these different contacts. So now I have an in with Activision. So now I'm getting access to stuff at Activision. Like I said, the EA stuff, the Xbox stuff. So I'm building up the podcast. I'm getting access to things. I'm going to E3. I'm doing all these things, and I'm saying all that because here I am in 2023, and a lot of those relationships I established back then, I still have to this day, which is wild. And not that even these same people are at the same places that they are, because, in the industry, people move around. But I think that's one of the more important things that I think some of the newer creators aren't understanding now. It's about relationships. It's about, that's the most important thing, Sure, the access is great. Sure, getting a review code is great and going to an event, but it's about again, the people and the relationships that you establish.
Yeah.
And again, back in those days, there was no rhyme or reason or rules to how any of this stuff worked, because like you brought up Aaron Greenberg. I met Aaron Greenberg for the first time. Was it 06? 06, 07, whatever E3 that was. It was a Santa Monica E3. So it was 07. That was the first time I met Aaron Greenberg. That's how long I've known him.
Wow.
Right?
Wow,
Which is crazy. And back then he wasn't head of marketing or anything like that. You know what I mean? So it's like it's so funny. And I didn't know it at the time. And I know I'm jumping all over the place. I apologize. But
no, it's fine.
This would have been 2008. I want to say this is whenever Gears 2 was coming out.
Okay.
And there was a Gears of War 2 party at E3. Dan and I were not invited.
Oh no.
And it's whatever. It's a long time ago. I'm sure he doesn't care if I tell it now. So again, we know Aaron at this point, right? And Aaron kind of gave us a hint of where it was, even though we weren't invited. So we used that information, found out where it was. We showed up at the check-in thing. Now, again, this is where relationships come in handy.
Yep.
One of the PR people from Microsoft, Danny and I knew from previous stuff. We're at the check-in, and she looked at us, and she goes, "You're not on this list." Yeah, it's like, "Oh, we know." No. She's like, "Just go in." So we got in anyway. Again, you establish these relationships with people, and she's like, "Okay, I know you are. Whatever, go in." So
awesome.
now we're in this Gears of War party, and I'm going to come all the way around to get to my original point. But we're in this Gears of War party. Joe DiMaggio's there. Carlos Ferrer's there. Oh my God, the actor that plays Coltrane, he's there. We're talking. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We're talking to all these people. Matter of fact, we even did an interview with Joe DiMaggio. He's drunk off his butt.
Oh, no.
And it's hilarious. He's doing the Bender voice, and they're like, we're dying laughing. But anyways, so we're at this thing doing all that. Little did I know, guess who I also met at this same party, and he's in a completely different role than what he is now. Phil Spencer.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think he was just handling third-party games or something like that. Again, he was nowhere close to the position that he obviously is in now, at the head of Xbox. But again, it goes to show you meet these people along the way at different stages of their careers and their lives. And you just never know where it's going to come back later. And it wasn't like, oh, me and Phil were buddies or anything like that. But he was at that party too. Yeah. And we had a conversation. What it was about, I have no idea at this point, but it's just so funny, how things come back around. Like I said, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, so I'm going to speed this up to get to modern times. So like I said, I retired from Gamertag or from Uncle Gamer in 2011. Like, oh, I'm good. I've done everything. It's fine. Danny and I have been friends this entire time through the years. And now we're in 2013. And BioShock Infinite is coming out or came out. And that was a game that was on my radar. I just love the first one. And Ken Levine, the whole thing. Again, one of the best interviews I've ever done in my life was Ken Levine in 07 for the first BioShock. It was fantastic. Second, that's probably second. The first would have been Mass Effect 2 with Casey. Why am I blanking on names? I'm blanking on names. But
Casey Hudson.
Thank you, Casey Hudson. For Mass Effect 2, because that's just how much I love Mass Effect in that series. Anyways, going back to what I was saying. So I had retired. I'm done. BioShock Infinite's coming out. Danny asked me to come on Gamertag Radio because they were going to review BioShock Infinite or talk about it, whatever, right? So I come on talking about it. And that went over so well with the audience. They were like, "Oh, you should get Parris come on more often." Whole thing. Me, I'm like, I don't know, I'm good, whatever. Long story short, I'll never forget vividly. Someone was like, "You need to get Parris to be a part of Gamertag Radio." This is like online. I'm like in a Sports Authority getting my son some shoes or something, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking on Facebook about this, and Pete says, "Yeah, why don't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why don't I?" And literally in that moment, I joined Gamertag Radio. But the stipulation was, I'm like, "Look, I don't know if I could be on every episode. We'll see. I don't know, because at this point I'm good. I don't need to come back to podcasting or anything. I'm just like, we'll see.
Okay.
I've been a part of it ever since.
Yeah.
Never stopped. And we were friends coming into this point. And when I talk Gamertag Radio, I'm talking myself, Danny, Peter Toledo, Mandy, David. Like, we all went from being friends that were family.
Right.
I mean, we're literally family at this point. I'm talking being a part of weddings and children being born and just all these crazy things of life, that go way beyond just hopping on a video game podcast at this point, right? But yeah, so at that point, I'm a part of Gamertag Radio. I have been, ever since, still am to this day. Obviously, a lot has changed. So now I'm going to move all the way forward to 2020. Now we get to 2020. I had already been thinking about maybe I'm good. I'm good. I think I might start wrapping this up pretty soon, just in my head, not saying anything out loud or showing any indication, but I'm just thinking this in my head. So I'm actually going to back up a little bit. So take you towards the end of 2019. We know the 1,000th episode of Gamertag Radio is coming up. And Danny's thinking, okay, who can we get? We got to get somebody, right? I go instantly, it's got to be Phil. It has to be. I go, this started as an Xbox podcast. He's the head of Xbox's 1,000th episode. We got to get Phil. I don't know if we're going to be able to get him. This whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Now, the Game Awards is 2019. The Game Awards 2019. First one I've ever gone to. Obviously, Phil's there. They revealed the Series X, Hellblade 2, the whole thing, right? I'll never forget, we're in the JW, and I see, actually, no, this was actually at the Microsoft Theater. I see Aaron Greenberg, right? Again, I know Aaron at this point. It's, no big deal for me to, come see him, hug it out, talk to him, whatever. And I remember I was like, hey, I said it to Aaron. I go, hey, Gamertag Radio's 1,000th episode is coming up early next year. We would love to get Phil. I just want to float that out there now. Said it. Right? Move on. Now, later that night, we're in the JW. Now, I'll take you back to 2014. We got to talk to Phil Spencer in 2014 because this was right after he basically took the job as the head of Xbox. We got to talk to him at E3. And it was great conversation, great rapport with him, whole thing. Because I had even told him to his face, I was like, I don't like Kinect, and here's why. I told him, like, I disagreed with making it a part of the Xbox One, being bundled in, and the price. It was like, if you're going to put Kinect in, then you can't charge me for it. It just has to be an accessory. Because again, the PS4 undercut him $100. You know the whole story.
The whole story.
Yeah. So going back to this at this time, Game Awards. So I'm in JW, and I see Phil Spencer, and I don't think he don't know who I am, whatever, right? Hey, how you doing? He goes, I know who you are, right? And I'm like, wait, what?
Cool.
What's going on here? I said it to his face. Hey, we got 1,000th episode, Gamertag Radio. We would. I don't know who we'll need to talk to, whatever make it happen, but we would love to get you on.
Yeah.
Now, that happens. 2 weeks later, PR reaches out to Danny and I about getting Phil to come on. So I'm not going to take credit that I'm the reason that it happened, but I'm going to take credit that I'm the reason it happened.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it was me saying it directly to Phil or to Aaron or whatever, but, they made it happen. So now we're talking with PR, comms and everything to set it up. And I remember Phil had went to Japan for whatever meetings he was doing. He literally tweeted out, this was like the middle of January, end of January, something like that. He tweeted out that he was coming on Gamertag Radio.
Wow.
And the love and hate that we got
I can imagine
over that was incredible. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I remember that time.
Yeah. And so now it's February. We do the interview with Phil. Went great. And I remember I had even specifically asked him about why Xbox isn't doing VR, and he kind of answered that. And I asked him about their struggles in Japan, and he answered that, and those comments kind of went viral. Us talking about that, and like I said, the episode comes out, pandemic happens right after that. So now we're all home, and but that was the moment that kind of put Gamertag Radio and myself like kind of on the radar for different people that didn't know about, that had never listened to us and knew about us, right? So now we're in a pandemic, we're all home. I'm working from home at this point. So now this allows me more freedom to do stuff. Oh, backtracking. Going back to that same Game Awards 2019. This is my first real conversation with Greg Miller. Kind of funny.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'd always known Greg. You casually see him. And this is another one where at a previous E3, he knew who I was, and I was shocked. Wait,
right.
You know who I am? What?
Yeah.
But 2019, this was the first time actually Game Awards, I actually had a real conversation with Greg, talking to Greg, kind of getting to know him a little bit. And even at this point, he's just getting swarmed. Everybody wants to talk to Greg. Didn't think too much of it after that, right? And this is, again, right before the pandemic. Greg had reached out. He wanted me to come up to the studio in San Francisco during GDC, because they were just, everyone's at GDC at that time. And I was going to do the Kind of Funny podcast I think I was going to do Kind of Funny Daily and the podcast, and Xavier Woods was going to be there with Blessing, and we were going to do something, but it was going to be during GDC. I remember this. And pandemic happened, canceled all of it.
Yeah.
Done. So that's not happening.
Unbelievable.
Oh, I have to backtrack. So during all this time, I am kind of on the radar a little bit of more people, because all the cyberpunk stuff that happened. Because 2018, that video, Danny
that's
shot,
right.
Danny shot that video of me coming out of the booth in 2018, and that went viral. And then E3 2019, they did the other one where I come out, and everybody CD Projekt Red's applauding as I come out. So that had kind of put me on radar, because I'm over the moon for that game, as people know. And even Gamescom, I went to Gamescom in 2019, had met with a bunch of all that stuff. So all these things are happening all around this time, right? So like I said, so now I don't get to go up to Kind of Funny because of the pandemic. We're all home. Again, this is where fate just comes in. It's so weird. So I'm just randomly at home. I remember I had meetings I had to be on or whatever. Ryan McCaffrey, who, again, I've not sat and had a real conversation with Ryan. I know Ryan in passing. Hey, how you doing at E3? We follow each other on Twitter. That's about it. Ryan DMs me, hey, I think Destin couldn't be on or something. Hey, I don't have anyone to be on Unlocked. Would you want to come on Unlocked, on IGN Unlocked? I almost said no, because I remember I had a meeting or something that was going to happen, and then it got canceled last minute. So I was like, okay, I'll come on. So it was just Ryan and I on this podcast, and we're doing the podcast. And it's just a one-on-one conversation. I'm giving my crazy theories on stuff and perspective on things, and great conversation we had. Yeah. That episode went over very well internally at IGN.
I remember.
So much so, I'll say this. I don't think it's a big deal, but Ryan had even asked me, had I ever been interested in like actually working in Games Media or whatever. I was like, I thought about him and, my career, kind of thing. So, I graciously, declined, but, I'm very flattered that, they even made that type of offer to me. Yeah. So long story short, now we're getting into the Series X reveal, this whole thing, right, in 2020. And plus, again, Cyberpunk is a big thing during this time. So IGN hired me to actually come on and host and be a co-host for their coverage of the Series X reveal. Okay. So I'm kind of like quote unquote on the big stage of doing that, but I'm comfortably doing it from home. I have to stand on a real stage. So I do that. I'm co-hosting with Ryan and Destin and everybody, Miranda, for revealing the Xbox. And I'll never forget, very humbling. I had a few people at Xbox like reach out to me. Oh, you did a great job. Thought that, you did really good. The whole thing. I was like, wow, this is flattering. And then Cyberpunk, they were doing the Night City Wires. and IGN hosted one of that, and they had me come on and do that too. So nice. I got to do that. So now I'm working with IGN doing stuff, and then I wind up that same 2020 working with them for some of their Gamescom coverage that they were doing because pandemic, this is all digital stuff. So I'm doing that.
Yep,
just blowing my mind. Now, in the middle of all this, bringing it back into Greg Miller, they had decided, hey, because it was Gary Whitta's idea, why are we not doing an Xbox show? We should do an Xbox show. So they were doing like kind of a trial run for an Xbox show. Okay. So it was, and this is when, Snowbike Mike was first coming on. He's pretty new, and raw to doing this. So it's Mike, Gary, and Alana Parris. Was the third and I'm just watching this as a fan. I'm just watching it, hey, whatever. Right. Every now and again, I would make some comments and stuff, on Twitter after I'd see an episode. And I'll never forget. One day, Alana reaches out to me and says, like, Gary couldn't be on. Would I mind basically being the third seat?
Wow.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Man.
Sure. Why not? Come on, do it. It wound up being really good. Hey, loved it. Feedback. From it was really good from the community and everything. Great. I'm a fan. I'm back to just watching like I normally would.
It's easy. Yeah.
And I'll never forget, Gary wasn't going to be on again, but then it turned out he could be on. So now I'm on with Gary a lot. Like we're all on together doing it.
Yep.
It's great again. It's good. Now, Alana, because she, took the job with Sony Santa Monica, has to leave the show. Mm-hmm. And it was so funny because when that happened, a lot of people were saying I should replace Alana to be on the show. Mm-hmm. And then privately, Greg and Tim reached out to me for that very fact, but they didn't want to announce it right away. They want to wait, They wanted to reveal it when they do their big thing at, in the first of the year. So long story short, I wind up joining XCast, at the top of, I guess that'd have been 2021. I wind up joining as a full-time host on the show. And, obviously I've just been doing that ever since. Yeah. And then we know what happened in 2021. Out of the freaking blue, Microsoft was reaching out to me. Hey, we have a thing where we need you to come up to Seattle for a week.
Yeah, that was cool to watch happen.
For this thing. And I'm like, okay, what the hell is this? What am I going to be doing? Because again, very secretive. They do not tell you anything until like literally.
They're always like that. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Which now I'm used to. I get it now. But as I said, way back before I started all this rambling, I had never done anything like that before, ever. And I'll never forget, I'm filming the whole thing. Obviously it doesn't, it's pre-tape. So now I'm home with my family. We're all watching. Right. I was so nervous. I was so nervous because I don't know how it's going to come out. Great. I don't know what it's going to look like.
You did do great. Yeah,
it's just crazy. Like all the feedback I got from people and just congratulating on me. And then I'm thinking, well, I'll never do that again. And then they asked me to come back again. And, nice. I did it for Gamescom. And then obviously last year, they had me do some stuff for Flight Sim. But it's been crazy, man. It's been, and I feel like I've been talking forever, but
it's great.
No, it's good detail. It's just
it's just been quite the journey because again, I say this all the time. Who am I? I'm nobody. I just talk. I just talk. I just give my opinion. But I think the one thing that I try to do that the advice that I pass on to other people as well is, it's okay to be critical. But you can be respectful about it. I think when I think about content creation these days, and I look at some of my contemporaries, and there's obviously some really great and awesome people out there that do amazing work. But then I see other people that have great perspective that could be awesome at doing this.
Right.
But when it comes to the criticism, they go for the low hanging fruit and they do it in such a disruptive way that it's kind of a turnoff to me. Yeah. I think I will give you a prime example right now of critical feedback. I personally did not agree with how Xbox and Bethesda communicated about Redfall being 30 frames per second. Didn't like it. Yeah. Still don't like it. But it's like when you provide, my whole thing is when you provide criticism, provide a solution.
Right.
If you're there if you can critique something,
Yeah.
also provide a solution to your critique. Like, what would
Mhm.
you do in that
Yeah,
scenario?
because they already
And
know it's an
don't
issue.
leave it off. Don't leave it off.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing. This is why you're in the hole you're in. You know what I mean? Like,
And that's all it is. Like even, you know,
there's
on
a lot
the
of
other
dogpiling. A lot of dogpiling that goes on.
exactly. So and that's my only thing that just from my years of doing this is sure. It's easy to celebrate something when it's good. But when something's bad and you need to critique it, try to also provide alternatives as to what you think could remedy the solution or make it better. You know what I mean?
You do that a lot.
Yeah. And that's just my whole thing with it. And it's just who I am. I've always been that way. And this is where I think being in the Navy really helped me out, because it helped instill in me the discipline and the time management and critical thinking that you need, I think, to be successful in anything that you do. Doesn't have to be any of this, and just anything in life. You know, try to always look at things from both sides of the aisle, right? Not everything is just simply black and white, you know, one way. You may like something one way, but someone else might like it another way, and someone else may bring in a perspective of something that you didn't even think of.
For sure.
And I try to always look at it that way, that my opinion or what I say is not necessarily the right answer. It's just my opinion, my perspective. But if you can bring a different perspective to it, I'm very open to listening to that. And I will be the first to admit when I'm wrong about something, because I think I'm wrong a lot, but I'm also not afraid. Exactly. But I'm not afraid to make that mistake, as you would say, or give that opinion, because that's how you learn. That's how you grow.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason why people like watching you so much, and why you are offered opportunities, because you always present as honest and authentic. And you're not trying to put on, like I said at the beginning, when we first met last year, you are the exact same person one-on-one is that people see. And that's unique. I mean,
I take pride in that.
It's a strong trait.
I appreciate that, because when you said that earlier, that's something I take pride in, that the dude you're talking to right now is the same dude that you're going to talk to if we meet in real life. It's there's no need to be a gimmick or an act or pretend to be something that I'm not. Now, I'll say this on that very note. It's the one thing about social media that I've learned to not engage with, but I may not engage with it and respond, but I see a lot. And it's the one disappointing thing that I see, where people think that this is an act, that I'm not really who I am. And it's like, I so badly want to critique that, but then I go, it's a waste of time. It's the internet. You're not changing minds on the internet. You know, my whole thing is, anyone that has actually met me or talked to me for more than 5 minutes will know this is who I am. And that's all you can do.
I've defended you in the past, and one of the things I remember about you, the first time I really started to get to know you, is when you were like freaking out about Destiny 60 frames per second on PC. I think it was like in 2015. I think you played it at the E3 thing, and you were always fair from that point. You were the first on that bandwagon pushing 60 frames per second. As you know, now everyone's on that bandwagon. But that's what I remember you. And like, people were like, he's an Xbox fanboy, he's a snap. I'm like, I thought he was a PC guy. You know what I mean? So you've always come off fair and balanced. I really do feel that. You are an Xbox fan, that's good. But like you said, there's been many times I remember you called out Phil on his VR tweet or a VR comment.
Because that's when and then I said it to him directly.
And then he acknowledged it, and that's the good thing. We there comes a point where it's like it's constructive criticism, I feel, is good, but destructive criticism is another thing, and I think people are more into the destructive criticism. Hey, you suck. You can't do you play the power of the X and you can't even get 60 frames per second. 30 haha, bye. That's more the comment than, maybe you should have communicated better. Maybe you should have delayed. Did you consider any of that? Because the optics of this is absolutely horrible, or whatever the situation. But that's the way of going about it. Versus, hey, I'm going to just knock you down while you're down.
Well, and all that negative bashing just becomes white noise, right?
It does.
Because
it really
that's
does.
90% of it. So someone may think that they have a unique perspective, but if you're just scrolling through, that's most of the comment is just bashing.
So there's like two things.
Yeah.
There's two things on that, and let me address the first one. Going back to Xbox, to what you were just talking about, Tim. So again, obviously, I'm on an Xbox show. I make no bones about it that I am a fan of the vision of what Xbox is doing and what they're trying to do. But what people don't realize is, and this is why I say people clearly don't listen to my content that criticize, because they're not hearing me. They only see a tweet or a picture, right? Because I was highly critical of Xbox during the Xbox One era. Had been from jump, from the launch of the thing. Again, talking about Kinect and $500 and whole thing. It wasn't until 2016 where it clicked, where I went to they did a spring showcase. They don't do these anymore, but they used to do a spring showcase. It was in San Francisco, and I flew up. And Phil gave a keynote at that. And to this day, I truly wish that thing was available to the public, because everything, and when I tell you everything that is Xbox today, he said in 2016.
Yeah.
And that was that moment that I go, oh, wow, this was what they talked about, Play Anywhere, the PC, early stages of the cloud. They were talking about early stages of Game Pass at that point. Cool. All these things were being talked about then in 2016. And I go, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. I get it now. And that's when it kind of shifted for me, where I'll never forget at that very same E3. And that's when they officially announced Xbox Play Anywhere, right? And I never forget, Aaron Greenberg messaged me and looked up at the crowd to where I was sitting, like, are you happy now? Because I was very critical of it. But again, critical but respectful and fair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was that moment. And when people are like, oh, you're just an Xbox fanboy, it's like, no, I'm a fan of gaming, period. Like, I always find it hilarious that people will conveniently leave out, I cover all the PlayStation stuff too. I do. Like, ever since the PS5, I reviewed the PS5. I reviewed the VR.
You love Cyberpunk. You play.
Well, Cyberpunk is the other thing I'm about to get to in just a second. But it's always funny to me where people will only conveniently see one side of your perspective because it fits whatever narrative they want to have, which brings me to Cyberpunk. So, there's and I just got this the other day and I will fully admit it annoys the hell out of me, because I get this the yellow chair thing, right? Which I think is ridiculous, because number one, I wasn't the only one to get one. And number two, I mean, let's just keep it a buck. For the marketing that CD Projekt Red was doing during that time, I was definitely one of the bigger faces on it. I just was. I mean, I hosted, after this one thing I forgot. I hosted the launch event on Twitter Gaming for the game. But what people fail to realize and understand is, and at this point, I'm not trying to convince anyone, think what you want to think. Yes, I played a cloud streamed preview of the game. And it was only that opening start of it that you basically see in the 48-minute demo.
Right.
You can go play the unpatched version of that today. It's fine.
Yeah.
You're not going to play that part and go, this game's going to have a bunch of issues. What's going on here? That was clearly one of the more polished portions of the game, was the prologue.
Of course.
Now, when you get into the game proper, obviously we saw all the issues. The one thing that I got a lot of grief for, and this was a lessons learned that I take, and the tweet is still out there. When they showed the PS5 and the Series X versions of the game, and obviously it was a very curated vertical slice that they showed of gameplay, I said, we don't need to worry about the console. The console versions are going to be fine. Obviously that was wrong, because in hindsight, we've seen all the issues the Xbox One and the PS4 versions have had with the game, and obviously all the other technical issues that it had. And I caught a lot of grief over that, because
I saw.
But it's fine. But it's fine, because I will still, because people are like, if you could go back and do it again, would you do it again? Yes, because how was I to know what the other part of the game was when they clearly were obviously hiding it for whatever reasons? The only review codes that went out were PC. They were not showing the last gen versions, of the game. Lesson learned. Okay, I get it.
I think that's how most of us saw what you were doing, though. You were just speaking about what you knew of. Like, because I was following you and listening to the things you were saying, and I never had the feeling that, he's misrepresenting anything.
Yeah,
and I think that's most people who didn't get into the nasty conversations. We all saw what was really happening.
Because one sec, the one thing that, again, people hear and see what they want to see, because the people that were very critical of being on that never watched the Kind of Funny review for Cyberpunk 2077, because I did not recommend the game in that review. It's like, you saw what I said before it was out, but when it was out and I actually played it, I gave you my honest opinion on it. It wasn't like I was making excuses. I go, they should not have put this out. This should have been delayed probably another year, is what I said. I'll bring you to just this week where the stupid chair thing came up again. Jedi Survivor. In my review, I said, this is one of the best Star Wars experiences I've ever had, but playing on the Series X had a lot of technical issues, crashes, audio dropout, frame rate. I said all of this. I go, but as we're recording this, there is supposed to be a day one patch. Your experience may change because of that. That is a direct result of my lessons learned with Cyberpunk, obviously, right? I want to make sure I'm as transparent as possible for that. So then what did I do? I tweeted about praising the game, and I didn't in the tweet say, it had some technical issues. I had someone basically say, they must have sent you a chair you bought. So I'm like, oh my God, here we go again. It's like you literally can't win when it comes to stuff like that. But whatever, if you actually consume the review, you will hear exactly what I said. So it's things like that I've learned over the years, that sometimes you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You can only just 100%. Be genuine to who you are. And you can't worry about that stuff.
Yeah, a lot of those comments.
And I hate to say it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, a lot of those comments.
You go.
Yeah, it's a little lag.
A lot of those comments are just somebody trying to inject themselves into the conversation.
Yes, and that's what 100% it is. It's attention. I've learned a lot of things.
Right.
And I'm saying this in the. I am not trying to be arrogant at all, and I hope this does not come out arrogant in the least, because this is not my intention when I say this. But there's a lot of jealousy when it comes to that. That is the bottom line of what I've learned. I have been more than fortunate and lucky and just thankful for a lot of the opportunities and things that I've received over the years, especially since 2020. Just so many different opportunities have come my way. And again, I'll just go back to the Cyberpunk chair. If CD Projekt Red came to you before that game came out and say, hey, we want to send you this. No, I know I'm not going to take it. Of course you're taking it.
Nobody's saying no.
No one's saying no to that stuff. Xbox goes, hey, we would love for you to host our show. Of course. Who wouldn't take that opportunity? And it's things like that where, no, you're saying these things because it's pettiness. It's jealousy in that way. And all I can do is try to be as respectful and as humble as I possibly can be for these opportunities, because they can all be gone tomorrow, is the way that I look at it. There's nothing guaranteed to ever come to me. And I'm just thankful for the ones that I have had. And, and to the people that, reach out to me and ask me for advice. Again, this is where I bring Danny back into it. I'm not doing any of this without Danny. I'm not doing any of this without people helping me along the way to get to this point. And you never forget that. And you're always like, if anyone ever watches an interview, anything that I do, the first thing I always bring up is Danny, because he's the one that taught me so much back in those early days of the hustling and the grinding and, do this, do that, try and say, if it's exclusive, say it, put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, things like that. And it's like, I try to pay that forward when anyone asks me for advice as well, because I think that's very important, because I'm not going to be doing this forever. And the other important part of this, even while I am doing it, it's okay if more people do it too. Why aren't we sharing? Of course.
Right,
Why not?
right.
The more successful people that are out there, the better. Especially me being African American. There's not a lot of us.
Yeah.
There just isn't. The more of us that can get into this and have their perspectives and their different cultures and their, diverse backgrounds injected into the stuff that we do, the better. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, the community is way better off with that perspective. I mean, everybody has more fun. It feels closer with everybody supporting each other, and that perspective really shines through in all your work. You always seem genuine, and this is a perfect example of what you're saying. I mean, we just spoke a couple days ago about recording together, and now here you did not hesitate for a second. You were like, absolutely, I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weekend. I mean, I had free time. That's why when we were like scheduling, I was like, hey, the earlier the better. I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an unbelievably inspiring story, man. Thank you so much for sharing.
Have I really almost been talking for 2 hours?
Yeah, I don't want to keep you too long. I told you an hour, and we're pushing.
That's why I told you. I told you when you were saying it. I go. Trust me, we won't have any issues doing this because I'm a talker.
Yeah, no, it's been fascinating to listen to the entire thing, and I knew
I've learned a lot.
I really wanted to speak to you because I knew what a genuine person you are, and from meeting you at FanFest and the experience that you gave to me, I really wanted to share with people who may not know your backstory and know you personally a little more, what you're really like, and hopefully your story and you following your inspiration really shows some other people that there's no glass ceiling above anybody's head. They can just jump into it and maybe hopefully get into what they're passionate about, like you clearly have.
And that's the thing. And first and foremost, I truly appreciate all the kind words. I appreciate you, inviting me on and, obviously spending the last couple hours talking to this whole time. But that's the thing. It's like, I am passionate about this. It is a passion of mine. It is something that I have shied away from admitting to myself, but I am good at doing this. I just am. It comes to me naturally to be able to, obviously we all love video games, but to talk about video games and to kind of analyze it and look at the different perspective. What do you think is working? What do you don't think is working? What can improve? All that. I genuinely enjoy talking about all that stuff. And I genuinely enjoy meeting new people. Like, this hobby, this passion has literally allowed me to go around the world and meet people from everywhere, which is just crazy to me. Like to bring this full circle, to go from that moment back in '82 in an arcade looking at Donkey Kong to thinking, wow, that was the initial inspiration to get me into doing all this, and just the weird journey to get to this point. And again, I don't think I'm anybody special. I just think I'm very lucky and fortunate, to be in the position that I'm in, but I'm very thankful for it. And I'm thankful for being able to meet people like yourself. And obviously, Tim, I mean, you and I have talked so much online. By the way, are you going to be out here this June?
I am. I was going with Iron Lords, and we were supposed to go to Packers Party. So but what happened was that got canceled. E3 got canceled. They discussed it. They were going to have an Airbnb. We all decided that we'll just do next year if they do something. So I'm not going to be there. But I might be in LA or Seattle this year or next year. But I will let you know. We will get together.
No, absolutely. And that's
New York. Let me know too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. And I don't want to take it off into like another 20 minutes, but I'll say this really quick. That was the cool thing about even last year at FanFest, like meeting Colt Eastwood as an example. Like, it was so funny. I saw him just standing by himself at a table with a drink, and I just walked up to him, and we just got into a long conversation. It's like we'd all known each other forever. But those are the kind of things is why I love doing all this stuff. It's just getting to meet everyone and hanging out and having fun and talking about the thing that we all love to do, which is gaming. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer.
We're all passionate about it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. As just a part of this community, we're grateful to have you represent so many games, and I can't wait to see the next showcase that you host or the next opportunity that you get. You're a master orator, and you're an amazing representative of the community. I wish the community had more people like you. I think social media would be a much more positive place.
Yeah, we can only hope that for social media, but again, I truly thank you for having me on.
Absolutely,
this was fun.
Yeah, thanks.
All right,
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.